Okay, for more insight into China's booming EV industry, let's bring in Javier Mota. He is a digital automotive journalist. Javier, great to have you on our program. I'm sure you had a chance to listen to all those stories, a pretty good rundown from Europe to South America. Let's
Yeah, Sean.
let's focus on what's going on in the U.S. as well as the EU right now, the punishing tariffs that are going on. To what degree is that having an impact, and will it have an impact if this moves forward on China's EV sector?
Well, apparently they are moving forward, not immediately, but they will eventually later this year and next year and so on. And it's not only impacting the actual full vehicles, but also the parts, the batteries and the chemicals that go into the batteries. So it's going to be a big impact for the automotive industry. And the sad part is that consumers are going to hurt the most.
Yeah, I want to get back because China is really challenging what's going on in the EU, where it's really gaining a toehold and certainly has Hungary's support. But China says this has been unfair and that the EU is asking for too much information and is appealing to have these tariffs dropped. Do you think there's any way that is going to happen?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, every country has its own political ideas behind their decisions. In the U.S. now, 2024, we're going to have a presidential election. That has to do with the decisions they are taking now. But I don't know. I don't think the Chinese are making some of the best electric cars for very affordable cars. And it's all these tariffs, all these obstacles that all the governments are putting on are only going to slow the reach for the mass market.
You know, I spent a month in China in March, and I hadn't been there in 5 years, and I was shocked at the amount of progress that they had made in electric vehicles. For people in the U.S. and EU, go there and look at these cars. They are amazing. They do amazing things. They have auto drive already. So if these tariffs, it certainly seems from what you're saying, are going to go through. So how is this going to impact potential consumers in the EU, in the United States, and in other areas?
Again, the cars are going to be more expensive because when you put tariffs on anything, it becomes more expensive automatically. And to your point about being in China, you don't have to go to China. You have to go to Mexico only. I was able to drive MGs and Omodas down there. And you're right, they're really affordable cars, high quality. And when you compare the prices to the equivalent of the vehicles sold in the US, I mean, the price is like 30% much higher. So at the end, yes, this is going to impact the consumer at the very end, depending how much or what a percentages or all these tariffs are going to be. Simple is going to be more expensive. The interesting thing is that we already have some cars made in China already in the U.S. with Polestar. Not Volvo so much because they're already moving their production to the Charleston plant, but we still have some of them. Lincoln even is building the Nautilus there. So the competition in the automotive industry is really, really tough. And as you said, China is taking a big leap forward with all the technology. And of course, they have support from the government. They have their own rules. So they're doing really amazing things, as you said.
Yeah, and so where do you think China's going to turn to for its markets? Because clearly there is an appetite for these vehicles.
Well, they're already doing, at least in this part of the world, all Latin America, as I mentioned, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, where I visit often, Bolivia. They're a smaller market, like your previous segment was about Brazil, which is obviously the biggest market in the region. But definitely Mexico, not only because of the size of the market, because it's close to the U.S. and it's part of the American Free Trade Agreement, and through maybe a loophole here and there, they can find a way, if they build plants in Mexico for Chinese manufacturers, somehow they will be able, at some point, import their cars here in the U.S.
Yeah, but to that point, we should point out that if Donald Trump wins, he's made it clear he's going to put a target on those vehicles and wants to keep them out at all costs. But moving on, how is all this changing China's long-term EV strategy? And one really doesn't have to make a great leap to think this is certainly going to affect the way that countries are trying to reach their energy goals, trying to stop punishing CO2 emissions.
Definitely. I don't think China will change it a lot. Maybe they will adjust, maybe geographically and politically, like where they are more able to grow their operations. And again, Mexico is very willing to have more plants. There's already talks about that, and you're right. Like they might not get it to the U.S. immediately, but competition is competition in a free
Right,
world.
right.
And North American Free Trade Agreement is supposed to be free trade. So again, I think the Chinese are advancing a lot. You say the cars are fantastic, the technology, the materials, and eventually, maybe not in 1, 2 years, maybe 5, 10 years down the road, we're going to see those brands somehow make it to the U.S. buy their own brands or some collaboration with other brands that are established here.